In the heart of ancient Tenochtitlan, beneath the shadow of towering pyramids, thousands gathered to witness a ritual so extreme it would make modern minds recoil. The Aztecs believed the sun itself required human blood to rise each day, and so they offered the ultimate sacrifice, beating hearts torn from living bodies to appease their gods. This was not an act of cruelty, but a profound expression of faith, a desperate plea to sustain the world itself. What could drive an entire civilization to perform such shocking acts in the name of religion? Today, we're diving deep into the past to uncover 40 of the most shocking religious rituals ever recorded. From the Aztecs to ancient Egypt, from the Vikings to the Mayans, these practices reveal a side of humanity that is both awe-inspiring and unsettling. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about faith, culture, and the lengths societies will go to connect with the divine. This is not just a journey into history, it's a journey into the very soul of humanity. The Aztecs believed the very survival of the universe depended on a single, gruesome act, the extraction of a still beating heart. This wasn't just a ritual, it was a sacred duty, a cosmic transaction between humanity and the gods. At the center of this practice was Huitzilopochtli, the sun god, whose insatiable appetite for human hearts was thought to fuel the sun's journey across the sky. Without these offerings, the Aztecs feared the sun would falter, plunging the world into eternal darkness. The ceremonies were as elaborate as they were harrowing. Priests adorned in intricate feathered headdresses and robes would lead the sacrificial victims, often prisoners of war, up the steep steps of towering pyramids. At the summit, the victim would be laid upon a stone altar, their chest exposed. With a single, precise stroke of an obsidian blade, the priest would cut through flesh and bone, reaching into the chest cavity to extract the heart. This organ, still pulsating, would then be held aloft as an offering to the gods, while the lifeless body was cast down the pyramid steps. Spanish conquistadors who witnessed these rituals left behind chilling accounts. One chronicler described the scene as a spectacle of horror and reverence, noting the eerie calm of the victims, who often went willingly to their deaths, believing they were fulfilling a divine purpose. Another wrote of the overwhelming scent of blood and incense mingling in the air as the priests chanted prayers to Huitzilopochtli. These first-hand testimonies provide a stark window into a world where life and death were deeply intertwined with the divine. But why did the Aztecs go to such extremes? For them, this wasn't mere brutality, it was a necessity. They saw the cosmos as a fragile balance, one that required constant maintenance. Human sacrifice was their way of repaying the gods for the creation of the world and ensuring its continued existence. It was a grim but deeply spiritual act, rooted in the belief that without sacrifice, chaos would reign. As we reflect on the Aztec rituals, it's impossible not to wonder, could any society take human sacrifice further? The answer lies in the annals of another civilization, one whose practices pushed the boundaries of devotion and fear to even greater heights. Moving from the unsettling rituals of ancient civilizations, we now turn to one of the most debated and chilling practices in history, the Carthaginian child sacrifices. In the ancient city of Carthage, located in what is now modern-day Tunisia, the gods Baal, Hammon, and Tanit were believed to demand the ultimate offering, the lives of infants. This practice, known as Molk, has left behind haunting archaeological evidence, particularly at sites like the Tophet, where thousands of urns containing the charred remains of young children have been unearthed. These findings have sparked intense debates among historians. Were these sacrifices widespread, or were they rare, symbolic acts reserved for extreme circumstances? The religious justification for these sacrifices lay in the belief that offering a child, seen as the most precious gift a family could give, would secure divine favor, ensuring prosperity, protection, or victory in war. Ancient texts such as those by the Roman historian Diodorus Siculus describe the rituals in grim detail, recounting how parents would hand over their infants to be placed on the outstretched arms of a bronze statue under which a fire burned. Yet, modern scholars like Professor Josephine Quinn argue that these accounts may have been exaggerated by Rome, Carthage's sworn enemy, to vilify their rivals. Could it be that the Carthaginians' reputation was tarnished by propaganda? Archaeological evidence offers a more nuanced picture. At the Tophet, inscriptions found alongside the urns often include phrases like "to the gods," suggesting a deeply spiritual motivation. Some researchers propose that many of the children may have died of natural causes, with their remains later consecrated to the gods. Others, however, point to the sheer scale of the burial sites as evidence of widespread ritual sacrifice. The truth may lie somewhere in between, a blend of religious devotion, cultural tradition, and perhaps even political necessity. This practice, as shocking as it is, invites us to consider the broader concept of self-sacrifice in religious rituals. From the Carthaginian altars to the blood-soaked temples of the Aztecs, the idea of giving up something of immense value, even life itself, to appease the divine appears across cultures and eras. Why did ancient societies see this as necessary? What drove them to such extremes in their quest for spiritual connection? These questions linger as we explore further into the darker corners of religious history. One of the most harrowing rituals in human history is the practice of sati, a tradition deeply rooted in ancient Hindu culture. Sati, derived from the Sanskrit word for virtuous woman, involved a widow voluntarily or forcibly immolating herself on her husband's funeral pyre. While it's now outlawed and widely condemned, this ritual held immense cultural and religious significance for centuries, seen as the ultimate act of devotion and purity. But where did this practice originate, and how did it become so deeply ingrained in society? The origins of sati can be traced back to ancient Hindu scriptures, where it was mentioned as a rare and honorable act performed by exceptional women. Over time, however, the practice evolved from a voluntary gesture of devotion into a societal expectation, often enforced by rigid cultural norms. Widows were sometimes pressured, coerced, or even forced into the flames, their sacrifice celebrated as a symbol of loyalty and moral virtue. For many, it was less about choice and more about upholding family honor and religious ideals. Colonial-era accounts provide chilling insights into the practice. British officials and travelers documented cases of sati, often expressing a mix of horror and fascination. One observer described the scene as both tragic and surreal, with the widow seated beside her husband's body, surrounded by chanting priests and onlookers who viewed her sacrifice as a sacred duty. These accounts shed light on the immense societal pressures widows faced, often ostracized and marginalized if they chose to live. For many, sati was not just a ritual, it was a grim alternative to a life of poverty and social exclusion. The abolition of sati came in the early 19th century, thanks in large part to the efforts of reformers like Roger Ram Mohan Roy, who campaigned tirelessly against the practice. His advocacy, combined with pressure from British colonial authorities, led to its official banning in 1829. Yet, even after its prohibition, the legacy of sati lingered, with sporadic cases reported in remote areas well into the 20th century. This persistence speaks to the deep-seated religious and cultural beliefs that once upheld the ritual. Reflecting on sati forces us to confront the complex interplay of faith, tradition, and societal control. It reminds us how deeply ingrained beliefs can shape and sometimes distort human behavior, even to the point of extreme sacrifice. But as we move forward, let's shift our focus from rituals of self-destruction to those of endurance and resilience, where physical trials became a testament to spiritual devotion. The sun dance of the Lakota Sioux is one of the most profound and enduring spiritual rituals in human history, a practice that intertwines physical endurance, communal healing, and deep spiritual connection. At its core, the sun dance is more than just a ceremony. It's a sacred act of devotion, a way to honor the Creator and seek visions that guide the individual and the community. For days, participants dance around a central pole, often without food or water, their bodies pierced with wooden skewers attached to ropes or buffalo skulls. The piercing symbolizes a sacrifice, a physical offering to the spirits in exchange for spiritual insight and the well-being of the tribe. This ritual demands extraordinary mental and physical resilience. Imagine standing under the blazing sun for hours, your body pushed to its limits, all while maintaining a state of spiritual focus. The pain is real, but so is the purpose. As one Lakota elder explained, the sun dance is not about suffering for suffering's sake. It's about giving something of yourself to connect with the sacred, to heal not just yourself but the entire community. Anthropologists have noted that the sun dance serves as a powerful reminder of the interconnectedness of life, where individual sacrifice strengthens the collective spirit. However, the sun dance hasn't always been celebrated. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, colonial powers sought to suppress indigenous practices, viewing them as obstacles to assimilation. The U.S. government went as far as outlawing the sun dance, forcing it underground, but the Lakota people held onto their traditions in secret, preserving their spiritual heritage against immense odds. In the modern era, the sun dance has experienced a remarkable revival, reclaiming its place as a vital expression of Lakota identity and resilience. Today, it stands as a testament to the enduring strength of indigenous cultures and their ability to adapt and thrive. This ritual, deeply rooted in communal participation and transformation, leads us to explore other ceremonies where collective effort and spiritual renewal take center stage. From the sun dance to other global practices, these rituals remind us of the power of shared experiences in shaping our understanding of the sacred and the human spirit. Imagine a world where the boundaries of society blur, where the rules of decorum are cast aside, and the night itself seems to pulse with wild, unrestrained energy. This was the world of the Bacchanalia, the secretive and scandalous festivals dedicated to Bacchus, the Roman god of wine, fertility, and ecstasy. These rituals, shrouded in mystery, were more than just celebrations. They were a rebellion against the rigid norms of Roman society. The Bacchanalia began as small, private gatherings, but by the 2nd century BCE, they had grown into large, chaotic events that drew people from all walks of life. Participants engaged in frenzied dances, drank copious amounts of wine, and entered states of euphoria that were said to bring them closer to the divine. Yet, it wasn't just the ecstasy that alarmed the Roman authorities, it was the whispers of darker activities. Roman historians like Livy described the Bacchanalia as a breeding ground for immorality, with rumors of orgiastic behavior and even criminal acts. Livy wrote that the festivals were a hotbed of every kind of corruption, where no crime, no act of lust was left unattempted. What made the Bacchanalia so threatening to the Roman Senate wasn't just the excess, it was the subversion of order. These rituals challenged the very fabric of Roman society, offering a space where social hierarchies dissolved, and individuals could experience a profound sense of spiritual liberation. For many participants, the Bacchanalia was a chance to break free from the constraints of their daily lives and connect with something greater. But for the Roman elite, this was a dangerous disruption. In 186 BC, the Senate moved to suppress the Bacchanalia, issuing strict decrees that limited participation and outlawed many of its practices. Yet, the legacy of the Bacchanalia endures as a powerful example of how rituals can both challenge and reshape societal norms. They remind us that devotion doesn't always fit neatly into the boxes society creates. Sometimes it spills over, wild and untamed. And as we turn our attention to rituals that involve extreme acts of devotion, we'll see how far humans are willing to go in their quest for spiritual connection. As Europe plunged into the chaos of the Black Death in the 14th century, a chilling movement emerged from the shadows, one that would leave an indelible mark on the religious landscape of the Middle Ages. This was the rise of the Flagellants, groups of devout Christians who believed that by whipping their own bodies, they could appease divine wrath and escape the horrors of the plague. Picture this: long processions of men and women, their faces twisted with fervor, striking their backs with leather whips studded with sharp metal. The sound of flesh tearing, the sight of blood staining the streets, it was a spectacle both horrifying and mesmerizing, designed to shock and inspire awe in equal measure. Contemporary chroniclers described these processions in vivid detail. One account from the time reads, "They marched through the towns, their cries of penance echoing against the stone walls, their blood mingling with the dust of the earth." Modern historians, however, see more than just religious devotion in these acts. They point to the deep psychological trauma wrought by the plague, a sense of helplessness and despair that drove people to extremes. For the Flagellants, the pain was not just punishment, it was a form of control in a world that seemed to be spiraling into chaos. They believed that by enduring physical suffering, they could cleanse their souls and, in turn, their communities. But what began as a grassroots movement of repentance soon alarmed the church. Initially, some clergy members saw the Flagellants as a sign of renewed piety. Yet as their numbers grew and their rituals became more extreme, the church began to fear losing its grip on religious authority. By the mid-14th century, the Pope himself condemned the practice, labeling it as heretical and dangerous. The Flagellants, once seen as holy warriors against sin, were now cast out as threats to the very faith they sought to uphold. This shift in perspective raises a fascinating question. What does it mean to seek redemption through suffering? The Flagellants' rituals, though extreme, tap into a universal human impulse, the desire to confront mortality and transform through pain. Their story sets the stage for another profound concept in religious history, the idea of symbolic death and rebirth, where suffering becomes a gateway to spiritual renewal. And it's this very idea that we'll explore next as we uncover rituals that take the notion of transformation to even more dramatic heights. The Eleusinian mysteries stand as one of the most enigmatic and revered religious rituals of ancient Greece, shrouded in secrecy for centuries. These sacred rites, dedicated to Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, and her daughter Persephone, promised initiates a profound spiritual awakening. At their core, the mysteries revolved around the myth of Persephone's abduction by Hades and her cyclical journey between the underworld and the earth, symbolizing death and rebirth. Initiates, sworn to secrecy under penalty of death, participated in a series of rituals that mirrored this myth, undergoing a symbolic descent into darkness and an eventual return to light. Ancient philosophers like Plato spoke highly of the Eleusinian mysteries, calling them a source of profound enlightenment. He famously wrote that those who experienced these rites were freed from the fear of death, gaining a deeper understanding of life's mysteries. The rituals often involved fasting, purification, and the consumption of a sacred drink called kykeon, which may have induced altered states of consciousness. This transformative experience was said to grant initiates a sense of unity with the divine, offering them a glimpse of eternity. The influence of the Eleusinian mysteries extends far beyond ancient Greece. Their themes of death, rebirth, and spiritual transformation echoed through Western esoteric traditions, shaping early Christian thought and later movements like Gnosticism and Freemasonry. Even today, the mysteries inspire modern spiritual seekers, reminding us of humanity's timeless quest for meaning and transcendence. As we move from the symbolic journey of the Eleusinian mysteries, we now turn to rituals that took purification to its extreme, where physical trials became a path to spiritual elevation. These practices, often involving intense acts of self-denial or even self-harm, reveal the lengths to which ancient cultures went in their pursuit of divine connection. Moving from the realms of self-sacrifice and purification, we now step into the fiery traditions of Fiji, where firewalking has long been a sacred act of devotion and spiritual endurance. This ancient practice, deeply rooted in Fijian culture, involves walking barefoot across scorching stones, often reaching temperatures that would seem impossible for human feet to endure. But for the Fijian people, firewalking is far more than a physical feat. It's a profound expression of faith, purity, and connection to the divine. The origins of Fijian firewalking trace back to a legend about a young warrior who was tasked with capturing an eel god. Upon succeeding, he was rewarded with the ability to walk on fire without harm, a gift he later shared with his people. Today, the ritual is performed by select individuals who undergo rigorous preparation, both physically and spiritually. Before stepping onto the stones, participants fast, meditate, and cleanse themselves in sacred waters, ensuring their bodies and minds are pure. Elders often chant prayers and blessings, invoking the protection of ancestors and gods to guide the walkers safely through the flames. Anthropologists studying the ritual have noted its dual significance. It's both a test of faith and a communal event that reinforces social bonds. One Fijian elder described it as a dance with the divine, where the act of walking on fire symbolizes the triumph of spirit over matter. The ritual is not without risk, and injuries can occur, which only adds to its mystique and the belief that only the truly dedicated can complete it unscathed. In modern times, firewalking has taken on a new dimension, evolving into a cultural spectacle for tourists. While some critics argue this commercialization dilutes its spiritual essence, others see it as a way to preserve and share Fijian traditions with the world. Visitors are often invited to witness the ritual, and some even participate under the guidance of local practitioners. This blend of ancient tradition and modern adaptation highlights the resilience of cultural practices in a changing world. As we reflect on the fiery devotion of Fijian firewalking, we're reminded of the many ways humans seek communion with the divine, sometimes through physical trials and other times through altered states of consciousness. These methods, though varied, all share a common thread: the desire to transcend the ordinary and touch the sacred. And with that, we turn our attention to rituals that explore the mind's journey into altered states, where the boundaries between the earthly and the divine blur into one. In the heart of ancient Greece, nestled on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, stood the sanctuary of Delphi, home to one of the most revered and enigmatic religious figures of the ancient world, the Pythia. Known as the Oracle of Apollo, the Pythia was no ordinary priestess. She was believed to be the living vessel through which the god Apollo spoke, delivering prophecies that shaped the fate of empires, guided kings, and influenced the course of history. But how did this priestess access the divine? The answer lies in a ritual so mysterious, it has fascinated historians and archaeologists for centuries. At the core of the Pythia's prophetic power was a trance-like state she entered by inhaling vapors rising from a sacred chasm beneath the temple. Ancient sources, including the historian Plutarch, describe a fissure in the earth that emitted ethereal gases, believed to be the breath of Apollo himself. Before delivering her prophecies, the Pythia would undergo a series of purification rituals, bathing in the sacred Castalian spring and burning laurel leaves as an offering to the god. Then, seated on a golden tripod above the chasm, she would breathe in the vapors, her body and mind surrendering to a divine frenzy. In this altered state, she would utter cryptic, often poetic pronouncements, which temple priests would interpret for those seeking guidance. The influence of the Oracle of Delphi cannot be overstated. Leaders from across the ancient world, from kings to generals, sought her counsel before making critical decisions. Herodotus, the famed historian, recounts how the Athenian statesman Themistocles consulted the oracle during the Persian Wars, receiving guidance that ultimately led to the Greek victory at Salamis. The Pythia's prophecies were not mere predictions. They were seen as the direct words of Apollo, shaping political, military, and personal decisions with their divine authority. Yet, the rituals of Delphi were as much about spectacle as they were about spirituality. The temple itself was a marvel of architecture, adorned with treasures and inscriptions from grateful supplicants. The process of consulting the oracle was a grand, theatrical affair designed to awe and inspire. Pilgrims would bring lavish offerings, and the temple priests maintained an air of mystique, ensuring the Pythia's prophecies were delivered with an aura of sacred power. The Oracle of Delphi stands as a testament to the intersection of faith, politics, and human psychology in the ancient world. It reveals how rituals, even those as seemingly bizarre as inhaling vapors from a chasm, could hold immense cultural and religious significance. As we move from the trance-like prophecies of Delphi, we turn our attention to rituals that demanded even greater extremes of devotion, acts of self-sacrifice and physical endurance performed in the name of the divine, proving that humanity's quest to connect with the gods has taken many forms throughout history. The Thuggee cult of India remains one of the most chilling examples of how religious devotion can take a dark and violent turn. Emerging in the medieval period and continuing into the 19th century, the Thuggees were a secretive group of ritualistic stranglers who believed their gruesome acts were offerings to the Hindu goddess Kali, the deity of destruction and rebirth. Their victims, often unsuspecting travelers, were chosen with meticulous care, and their deaths were carried out with a ritual precision that blurred the lines between devotion and brutality. The Thuggees justified their actions through a twisted interpretation of Kali's role in the cosmic cycle of creation and destruction. They saw themselves as instruments of her divine will, carrying out her work by ending lives in her honor. Colonial records from the British East India Company describe how Thuggee rituals often involved specific chants, prayers, and even the use of a sacred cloth called a rumal to strangle their victims. These acts were not random but deeply embedded in their belief system, which viewed murder as a sacred duty. The cult's eventual suppression by British authorities in the 1830s marked a turning point in India's colonial history. Through a combination of intelligence gathering, espionage, and harsh punitive measures, the British dismantled the Thuggee network, bringing thousands of its members to justice. While some modern historians argue that the British exaggerated the cult's influence to justify their colonial rule, there's no denying the terror the Thuggees inflicted on local populations. Their eradication not only ended a bloody chapter in Indian history, but also reshaped societal perceptions of religious extremism. As we reflect on the Thuggees, it's fascinating to consider how rituals of destruction often carry a symbolic duality. Acts of ending life are sometimes intertwined with beliefs about renewal and creation. This paradoxical relationship between destruction and rebirth leads us to explore other rituals where symbolic acts of violence serve as a gateway to transformation and new beginnings. The Viking blood eagle is one of the most chilling rituals ever recorded, a practice so brutal it still sends shivers down the spines of historians and enthusiasts alike. Imagine a victim being ritually executed by carving an eagle shape into their back, with their ribs severed and lungs pulled outward to resemble wings. This gruesome act wasn't just about punishment, it was deeply tied to Viking culture and their worship of Odin, the All-Father. According to Norse sagas, the blood eagle was a symbolic offering to Odin, a god associated with war, death, and wisdom. It was believed that such an execution would honor the gods and secure their favor in battle. But was the blood eagle a real historical practice, or was it a dramatic invention by later storytellers? Some historians argue that the descriptions found in sagas like the Orkneyinga saga and saga of the sons of Ragnar Lothbrok were exaggerated for dramatic effect, while others point to archaeological evidence and accounts from other cultures that suggest it may have indeed occurred. The debate continues to this day, with scholars analyzing every detail to separate fact from fiction. One thing is certain: whether real or legend, the blood eagle captures the violent and ritualistic nature of Viking society, where honor and divine favor were often sought through extreme means. This fascination with extreme rituals wasn't unique to the Vikings. Many ancient cultures believed in the power of purification through pain and sacrifice, a theme we'll explore next. The Mayan ball game, known as pits, was far more than a simple sport. It was a high-stakes ritual deeply intertwined with the spiritual and political fabric of Mayan society. Played in massive stone courts, the game involved two teams competing to pass a heavy rubber ball through a stone hoop using only their hips, elbows, and knees. But this wasn't just about athletic prowess, it was a cosmic battle. The ball symbolized the sun, and the court represented the heavens, making every match a reenactment of divine struggles between life and death, light and darkness. For the Maya, the outcome of the game held profound spiritual weight. While it's debated whether the losing team or the winning team, or perhaps even just the captain, was sacrificed, the stakes were undeniably tied to the favor of the gods. Sacrifices were seen as offerings to maintain cosmic balance, ensuring the sun would rise, crops would grow, and order would prevail. As one Mayan codex describes, the blood of the players nourishes the gods and their sacrifice sustains the world. Modern archaeologists have uncovered evidence of this ritualistic violence in the form of carvings and murals depicting decapitated players, their heads displayed as trophies. Yet the game wasn't solely about death. It was also a celebration of life, skill, and communal unity. The ball game was a spectacle that brought entire cities together, blending sport, spirituality, and politics in a way that few other rituals ever have. From the thunderous cheers of the crowd to the solemn prayers of the priests, the Mayan ball game was a vivid reminder of how deeply interconnected the physical and spiritual realms were in ancient cultures. And as we move from the intense energy of these courts, we find another form of communion with the Divine One that involves movement, rhythm, and the universal language of dance. Step into the mesmerizing world of the Whirling Dervishes, a spiritual tradition that has captivated both the faithful and the curious for centuries. This ancient ritual, practiced by Sufi Muslims, is far more than a dance. It's a profound act of devotion, a moving meditation designed to bring the practitioner closer to the divine. Picture this: a circle of figures dressed in long, flowing white robes, spinning gracefully, their movements synchronized yet seemingly effortless. This is the Sema, the sacred dance of the Whirling Dervishes, a ritual that transcends time and space. At its core, the whirling dance is a form of active meditation. As the dervishes spin, their arms outstretched, one hand reaching toward the heavens, the other turned toward the earth, they symbolize a bridge between the material and the spiritual. The spinning motion itself is deliberate, a physical representation of the planets orbiting the sun, reflecting the cosmic order and harmony. Through this dance, the dervishes seek to shed their earthly attachments, emptying their minds and hearts to achieve fana, a state of spiritual ecstasy where the self dissolves into union with the divine. Sufi poet Jalaluddin Rumi, whose words have echoed through the ages, once described this practice as a way to turn toward the light and let your soul be drawn. Rumi's poetry often speaks of love and longing, of the soul's journey toward God, and the whirling ritual embodies these themes. It's not just a dance, it's a prayer, a surrender, a way to transcend the boundaries of the self and touch the infinite. Over the centuries, the tradition of the whirling dervishes has faced challenges, from political suppression to the pressures of modernization. Yet it has endured, preserved by dedicated practitioners who see it as a vital link to their spiritual heritage. Today, the ritual has found new life, not only in its traditional forms but also as a cultural performance that introduces audiences worldwide to the beauty and depth of Sufi mysticism. Modern adaptations have made the practice more accessible, but its essence, the pursuit of divine connection, remains unchanged. As we reflect on the whirling dervishes, we're reminded of the power of movement and music as tools for transcendence. But this is just one example of how rituals can harness the senses to elevate the spirit. Next, we'll explore other traditions that use music and sound as pathways to the divine, where devotion takes on even more extreme and astonishing forms. High in the remote mountains of Tibet, a ritual unfolds that challenges everything we think we know about death and the afterlife. This is the sky burial, a practice as ancient as it is profound. In this ceremony, the bodies of the deceased are carried to sacred mountaintops where they are left exposed to the elements and to the vultures that circle above. For many, the idea of such a ritual might seem shocking, even unsettling. But for Tibetan Buddhists, it is a deeply spiritual act, rooted in the belief that the body is merely a temporary vessel, a shell that no longer serves its purpose once the soul has departed. The sky burial is a vivid expression of the Buddhist teaching on impermanence. Tibetan monks often describe death as a natural transition, a moment when the physical form dissolves, allowing the spirit to continue its journey through the cycle of rebirth. As one monk put it, the body is like an empty house. Why cling to it when the soul has moved on? This perspective shifts the focus from mourning the loss of life to celebrating the continuity of existence. By offering their bodies to the vultures, practitioners believe they are performing a final act of generosity, giving back to nature and aiding in the cycle of life. Anthropologists who have studied the sky burial note its symbolic power. The vultures, often seen as sacred creatures in Tibetan culture, are not merely scavengers but messengers, carrying the soul toward its next incarnation. This act of transformation, turning the physical into the spiritual, reflects the Buddhist principle of detachment. It's a reminder that clinging to material forms, even our own bodies, only hinders spiritual progress. As one anthropologist observed, the sky burial is a lesson in letting go, a ritual that teaches us to release our attachments and embrace the impermanence of all things. This practice also highlights the interconnectedness of life and death. In the vast, open landscapes of Tibet, where resources are scarce, the sky burial serves a practical purpose as well. It ensures that the land remains unburdened by the weight of the dead, allowing the living to thrive. But beyond its practical benefits, the ritual is a profound meditation on the nature of existence. It asks us to confront our fears, to question our assumptions, and to see death not as an end but as a transition. As we reflect on the sky burial, we begin to see how rituals like these serve as powerful tools for transformation, not just for the departed but for those who remain. They challenge us to rethink our relationship with the physical world and to embrace the cycles of life, death, and rebirth. And with that, we turn to another set of rituals, those that involve symbolic acts of transformation, where the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual blur in equally profound ways. The ancient Egyptians believed that death was not an end but a transformation, a journey to the afterlife where the soul would live eternally. Central to this belief was the opening of the mouth ceremony, a profound ritual designed to restore the senses of the deceased, ensuring they could see, hear, speak, and eat in the world beyond. This ceremony wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was a necessary step to prepare the dead for their new existence. The ritual involved a series of precise actions and sacred tools. Priests would use a ceremonial adze, a blade-like instrument, to touch the mouth, eyes, and ears of the mummy or statue representing the deceased. Each touch was accompanied by powerful incantations from the Book of the Dead, such as the phrase, "You are pure, your ka is pure," which invoked the divine energy needed to awaken the senses. Other tools, like the pesesh kef, a flint knife, were also used to symbolically open the mouth, allowing the deceased to receive offerings and speak in the afterlife. Modern Egyptologists such as Dr. Salama Ikram have described this ritual as a bridge between the physical and spiritual realms. It wasn't just about restoring the body's functions, it was about ensuring the deceased could interact with the gods and partake in the eternal feast of the afterlife. The opening of the mouth ceremony was a cornerstone of Egyptian funerary practices, reflecting their deep conviction that proper preparation in death was as crucial as life itself. This ritual wasn't isolated, it was part of a broader cultural tapestry where the living honored the dead with acts of devotion. From elaborate tombs to daily offerings, the Egyptians went to extraordinary lengths to ensure their ancestors' comfort in the afterlife. And this idea of extreme devotion to ancestors isn't unique to Egypt. Across cultures, rituals have emerged that push the boundaries of human endurance, all in the name of honoring those who came before. These acts, whether peaceful or extreme, reveal the lengths to which humanity will go to preserve a connection with the past. Moving from the ancient practices of human sacrifice, we now turn to a ritual steeped in honor, discipline, and tragic beauty, the Japanese tradition of seppuku. Known more commonly in the West as harakiri, seppuku was a highly formalized act of ritual suicide performed by samurai warriors. It was not merely an act of death, but a profound statement of personal accountability, honor, and loyalty principles that define the samurai code or bushido. At its core, seppuku was a way for a samurai to restore their honor, either after a grave failure or as a means of atonement for a perceived dishonor. The process of seppuku was anything but spontaneous. It was a meticulously planned ceremony, often witnessed by others, and carried out with a level of precision that reflected the samurai's unwavering commitment to their principles. The ritual typically began with the samurai bathing and dressing in white robes, symbolizing purity. They would then kneel on a ceremonial mat, often atop a platform, and compose a final poem, a moment of reflection and poetic expression known as death verse. This act of writing poetry before death was considered the ultimate demonstration of composure and inner peace. With a short blade known as a tanto, the samurai would then make a deep, deliberate cut across their abdomen from left to right. To ensure the ritual was completed, a trusted second, or kaishakunin, would stand by to deliver a swift decapitation, sparing the samurai prolonged suffering. The cultural values behind seppuku were deeply tied to the samurai's identity. To die in this manner was seen as a way to reclaim dignity, especially in the face of defeat or disgrace. As one samurai text famously stated, "The way of the warrior is found in death." This stark sentiment underscores the belief that a life without honor was no life at all. Modern historians, however, have noted that the romanticized image of seppuku often overshadows its darker realities. While it was indeed a practice rooted in honor, it was also a tool used by feudal lords to enforce loyalty and discipline, sometimes even as a form of punishment. In popular culture, seppuku has been depicted in countless films, books, and even video games, often stripped of its cultural and historical context. These portrayals tend to focus on the dramatic act itself, rather than the intricate rituals and profound philosophical underpinnings. This romanticization has, in many ways, reduced seppuku to a sensationalized trope, obscuring the deeper complexities of the samurai ethos. As we reflect on the gravity of seppuku, it's impossible not to draw parallels to other rituals that involve extreme acts of purification, rituals that often use fire as a transformative force. Fire, much like the blade in seppuku, has long been seen as a means of cleansing and renewal, a theme we'll explore next as we delve into rituals that harness its power for spiritual and symbolic purposes. For thousands of years, the Zoroastrian tradition has held a profound reverence for the natural world, shaping one of the most striking burial practices in human history. At the heart of this ancient ritual are the Towers of Silence, circular stone structures perched on barren hillsides where the dead were left exposed to the elements. This practice was rooted in the belief that the earth, water, and fire were sacred and must remain unpolluted. According to Zoroastrian teachings, a decaying body was seen as impure, and burying or burning it would defile these sacred elements. Instead, the dead were placed atop these towers, allowing vultures and the forces of nature to return the body to the cycle of life. One Zoroastrian text, the Vendidad, emphasizes this principle, stating, "The earth is pure and the dead are impure. Let not the dead contaminate the living." This philosophy reflects a deep ecological consciousness centuries ahead of its time. Modern practitioners like Parviz Vajovand, a Zoroastrian scholar, explain, "The Towers of Silence were not just about disposal, they were a spiritual act of giving back to nature, a final act of respect for the world that sustained us." However, as urbanization spread and vulture populations declined due to environmental changes, this ancient practice faced challenges. In cities like Mumbai, where Zoroastrians once relied on these towers, the ritual has adapted. Some communities now use solar concentrators to speed up the decomposition process, while others have turned to burial in concrete-lined pits to prevent contamination. These changes reflect a delicate balance between preserving tradition and responding to modern realities. The Towers of Silence stand as a testament to a worldview that saw humanity as part of a larger, interconnected system. This ritual, though evolving, continues to honor the sacredness of nature and the cycle of life. As we move forward, we'll explore other rituals that focus on renewal and rebirth, where symbolic acts bridge the gap between the earthly and the divine. Among the most fascinating and controversial religious practices of the ancient world were the rituals of the Dionysian cult, a vibrant and ecstatic movement that swept through ancient Greece. Dedicated to Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, and ecstasy, this cult was far from the solemn ceremonies we often associate with religion. Instead, it was a celebration of liberation, a wild, unrestrained escape from the rigid structures of daily life. Participants, known as Bacchae or Maenads, would gather in the wilderness drinking wine, dancing to rhythmic music, and entering trance-like states. The goal, to transcend the boundaries of the self and achieve unity with the divine. Ancient playwrights like Euripides captured the intensity of these rituals in their works. In his play The Bacchae, he describes how followers of Dionysus would tear apart wild beasts with their bare hands in a frenzy of divine ecstasy. This wasn't just about indulgence or rebellion, it was a profound spiritual experience. By surrendering to altered states of consciousness, worshippers believed they could commune directly with the god, breaking free from societal norms and embracing a primal, untamed connection to the sacred. The Dionysian cult wasn't just a religious movement, it was also a radical social statement. In a society that prized order and restraint, these rituals offered a rare opportunity for women and marginalized groups to express themselves freely. The cult's emphasis on equality and liberation has drawn comparisons to modern countercultural movements, from the free-spirited hippies of the 1960s to today's rave culture, where music, dance, and altered states continue to be pathways to transcendence. But not all ancient rituals were about ecstasy and liberation. Some demanded extreme acts of devotion, often involving pain and suffering as a way to prove one's faith. From self-flagellation to ritualized endurance tests, these practices reveal the lengths to which humans have gone in their quest for spiritual connection. And as we'll see next, these acts of devotion weren't just isolated incidents, they were part of a broader tapestry of belief that shaped civilizations across the globe. Moving deeper into the realm of spiritual traditions, we come to the Native American vision quest, a profound rite of passage that has captivated the imagination of countless seekers for generations. At its core, the vision quest is a journey of solitude, fasting, and prayer designed to connect the individual with the spiritual world. It's not just a ritual, it's a transformative experience often undertaken at pivotal moments in a person's life, such as adolescence or during times of personal crisis. The preparation for a vision quest is as significant as the quest itself. Participants often spend days or even weeks in mental, emotional, and physical preparation. This might include purification ceremonies such as sweat lodges where they cleanse their bodies and minds. Elders guide them in setting intentions, emphasizing the importance of humility and openness to whatever messages the spirits may bring. Then the seeker is sent into the wilderness alone with nothing but a blanket and perhaps a sacred object for protection. For days, they fast, pray, and wait for a vision, a sign or revelation that will guide their path forward. What makes the vision quest so compelling are the profound experiences reported by those who undertake it. Many describe encounters with animal spirits, ancestors, or divine beings. These visions often carry deep symbolic meaning, offering clarity, purpose, and even healing. As one Lakota elder once shared, the vision quest is not just about seeing, it's about listening. The spirits speak in whispers, and you must be still enough to hear them. Anthropologists have noted that these experiences are not merely dreams or hallucinations, but are deeply rooted in the cultural and spiritual framework of Native American traditions, where the natural world is seen as alive and interconnected. In contemporary times, the vision quest has been adapted by many outside of Native American communities, often as part of modern spiritual practices or personal growth journeys. However, this adaptation has sparked important conversations about cultural appropriation and the need to respect the origins and sacredness of the ritual. While some argue that the universal human desire for spiritual connection justifies its use, others emphasize the importance of honoring the traditions and teachings of Native American elders. The vision quest reminds us of the power of nature as a conduit for spiritual communion. It's a ritual that doesn't rely on elaborate tools or grand ceremonies, but rather on the simplicity of solitude and the raw beauty of the natural world. This connection to nature as a spiritual gateway leads us naturally to explore other rituals that involve communion with the divine through the elements of the earth, rituals that remind us of our place within the vast, interconnected web of life. Moving deeper into the realm of ancient rituals, we arrive at the Lupercalia, a festival that was as bizarre as it was significant in Roman culture. Celebrated in mid-February, this fertility festival was steeped in mythology and ritualistic practices that might seem shocking by today's standards. At its heart was the sacrifice of goats and a dog, animals believed to embody fertility and purification. Priests known as the Lupercalia would then smear themselves with the blood of these animals, a symbolic act meant to invoke vitality and protection. But the ritual didn't stop there. These priests, now anointed, would run through the streets of Rome, striking bystanders, particularly women, with strips of goat hide. Far from being seen as violent, this act was considered a blessing, believed to promote fertility and ease childbirth. Roman poets like Ovid captured the spirit of Lupercalia in their writings, offering a glimpse into how deeply this festival was woven into the fabric of Roman life. Ovid described it as a time when the goat is slain to purify the people, highlighting the dual themes of sacrifice and renewal. The festival's roots trace back to the legendary founders of Rome, Romulus and Remus, who are said to have been nurtured by a she-wolf, a story that further connects Lupercalia to themes of survival, fertility, and communal strength. Interestingly, echoes of Lupercalia can still be felt today, particularly in the modern celebration of Valentine's Day. While the two holidays are vastly different in tone, the connection lies in their shared association with love and fertility. Some historians argue that the Christian Church repurposed elements of Lupercalia to create a more acceptable celebration of love and devotion, replacing the wild, primal energy of the Roman festival with the romantic ideals we recognize now. As we reflect on the endurance and intensity of Lupercalia, it's impossible not to notice a recurring theme in ancient rituals: the power of extreme acts to demonstrate devotion. From running through the streets to enduring physical trials, these practices often pushed participants to their limits, all in the name of faith and community. This idea of endurance as a form of worship takes us into even more fascinating territory, where rituals demanded not just physical strength but also an unyielding spirit of sacrifice. Imagine standing at the edge of a riverbank, surrounded by millions of people, all united by a single purpose: to wash away their sins and begin anew. This is the essence of the Kumbh Mela, a Hindu pilgrimage that stands as the largest religious gathering on earth. Held at 4 sacred river sites in India, Prayagraj, Haridwar, Nashik, and Ujjain, the Kumbh Mela draws tens of millions of devotees, ascetics, and curious onlookers every few years. The event is so vast that it's visible from space, a swirling sea of humanity converging on the riverbanks in a profound act of faith and devotion. At the heart of the Kumbh Mela is the ritual bathing in the sacred rivers, believed to cleanse the soul of past misdeeds and grant liberation from the cycle of rebirth. According to Hindu scriptures, the rivers themselves are imbued with divine energy during the Kumbh Mela, transforming the waters into a liquid form of grace. One ancient text, the Skanda Purana, describes the event as a time when the celestial nectar of immortality falls into the rivers, making them a portal to spiritual liberation. Modern participants echo this sentiment, often describing the experience as transformative. One pilgrim shared, "When I stepped into the water, I felt a weight lift off me, like I was reborn." The logistics of organizing such a massive event are staggering. Temporary cities spring up overnight, complete with tents, food stalls, medical facilities, and even bridges to manage the flow of people. Authorities work tirelessly to ensure safety and order, but the sheer scale of the gathering makes it a logistical marvel. Yet, for all its complexity, the Kumbh Mela remains deeply rooted in spirituality. It's not just about the physical act of bathing. It's a manifestation of Hindu cosmology, where time is seen as cyclical rather than linear. The event's timing is determined by the alignment of planets, reflecting the belief that the universe operates in repeating patterns of creation, preservation, and dissolution. The Kumbh Mela also highlights the interconnectedness of humanity and nature. The rivers, revered as goddesses, are not just sources of physical purification, but also symbols of life's eternal flow. This connection between water and spirituality is a recurring theme in religious traditions worldwide, from baptism in Christianity to ablutions in Islam. But in the context of the Kumbh Mela, it takes on a uniquely cosmic dimension, reminding us that rituals of purification are as much about renewing the soul as they are about honoring the natural world. As we reflect on the Kumbh Mela, it's impossible not to marvel at its ability to bring together people from all walks of life in a shared pursuit of transcendence. It's a testament to the enduring power of faith and the human desire to connect with something greater than ourselves. And as we move forward, this theme of purification through water will continue to surface in rituals across cultures, each with its own story to tell. The Akitu festival, celebrated in ancient Mesopotamia, was far more than just a New Year's celebration. It was a profound reenactment of cosmic order and divine authority. Held in the city of Babylon, this 12-day event revolved around the god Marduk, the patron deity of the city. At its heart was the dramatic retelling of the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation myth, where Marduk battles the chaos monster Tiamat and establishes the world. This wasn't just storytelling, it was a ritualistic performance meant to renew the cosmos and reaffirm the bond between the gods, the king, and the people. One of the most striking elements of the Akitu festival was the humiliation ritual. On the 5th day, the king would enter the temple of Marduk, where the high priest would strip him of his royal insignia. The king would then kneel before the statue of Marduk, confessing his sins and swearing loyalty to the god. This act wasn't about diminishing the king's power, it was about demonstrating his submission to divine authority. As one cuneiform text describes, the king enters, bows low, and says, "I have not sinned, Lord of the lands, I have not neglected your divinity." Only after this act of humility would the priest return the king's regalia, symbolizing Marduk's renewed endorsement of his rule. But why was this ritual so important? For the Mesopotamians, the king wasn't just a political leader, he was a mediator between the gods and humanity. The Akitu festival reinforced the idea that the king's power was divinely ordained, ensuring stability and prosperity for the coming year. As modern historian Mark Cohen notes, the Akitu was a time of cosmic renewal, but it was also a political tool, a way to legitimize the king's authority in the eyes of his people. The festival also included grand processions, communal feasts, and offerings to Marduk, creating a sense of unity and shared purpose among the people. Yet, beyond the spectacle, there was a deeper message. The world's order depended on the king's alignment with the divine will. This connection between ritual, myth, and power made the Akitu one of the most enduring and influential religious traditions of the ancient world. From the solemnity of the Akitu festival, we now turn to rituals where devotion takes a more visceral form through music, dance, and acts of extreme physical endurance. These practices reveal how ancient cultures used movement and sound to transcend the mundane and connect with the divine. The Yoruba Egungun festival is one of the most visually striking and spiritually profound rituals in West Africa. At its heart, this festival is a vibrant celebration of ancestral connection, where masked dancers adorned in intricate, colorful costumes are believed to embody the spirits of the departed. These dancers, known as Egungun, move through the community in a mesmerizing display, their presence serving as a bridge between the living and the ancestors. For the Yoruba people, this isn't just a performance, it's a sacred act of communion, a way to honor those who came before and seek their guidance in maintaining social harmony. The rituals surrounding the Egungun festival are deeply symbolic. The masks and costumes are not merely decorative, they are considered sacred garments that transform the wearer into a vessel for ancestral energy. Each movement, each chant, and each drumbeat is carefully orchestrated to invoke the spirits and channel their wisdom. Yoruba elders often emphasize that the festival is not just about remembering the dead, but about reaffirming the values they upheld: respect, justice, and community cohesion. As one elder put it, the ancestors do not sleep, they watch over us, and through the Egungun they speak. This belief underscores the festival's role in reinforcing social order, as the ancestors are seen as moral guides who ensure that the community remains aligned with its cultural and ethical foundations. Beyond its spiritual significance, the Egungun festival has also become a powerful symbol of cultural resilience. In the African diaspora, particularly in places like Brazil, Cuba, and Trinidad, the traditions of the Egungun have been preserved and adapted, often blending with local customs to create new forms of expression. Anthropologists have noted how these diasporic communities use the festival to maintain a tangible link to their African heritage, even centuries after the transatlantic slave trade. This continuity is a testament to the enduring power of ritual to unite people across time and space. As we reflect on the Egungun festival, it's impossible not to marvel at how art and spirituality intertwine to create something so deeply meaningful. This idea of communion with the divine through artistic expression is not unique to the Yoruba. It's a thread that runs through countless cultures and traditions. From the intricate masks of the Egungun to the sacred dances of other civilizations, art has always been a way to transcend the mundane and touch the sacred. It's a reminder that rituals are not just about the past, they're about finding ways to connect with something greater than ourselves, even in the present. And as we move forward, we'll explore how other cultures have used art to bridge the gap between the earthly and the divine. Imagine a ceremony so grand, so meticulously planned, that it could determine the fate of an entire kingdom. This was the Heb-Sed festival, an ancient Egyptian ritual that celebrated the pharaoh's renewal of power and divine right to rule. Held after 30 years of a pharaoh's reign and repeated every 3 years thereafter, this jubilee was more than just a spectacle. It was a profound statement of stability, strength, and the divine connection between the ruler and the gods. At the heart of the Heb-Sed was the pharaoh's symbolic rebirth. The rituals were designed to prove the ruler's physical and spiritual vitality, ensuring they were still fit to lead. The pharaoh would run a ceremonial course often marked by boundary stones, symbolizing the unification of Egypt and the renewal of their authority. This act wasn't just a test of endurance, it was a public demonstration of the pharaoh's divine mandate. As one ancient text puts it, the king runs to show he is strong, that he is Horus, the living god on earth. The festival was also a time of lavish offerings and grand processions. Temples were adorned with gold, and statues of gods were carried through the streets, their presence believed to bless the land and its people. Modern Egyptologists like Dr. Janus Mann described the Heb-Sed as a ritual of cosmic order, a way to reaffirm the pharaoh's role as the mediator between the gods and humanity. It wasn't just about the ruler's power, it was about the stability of the entire kingdom. The festival reminded the people that their prosperity depended on the pharaoh's divine connection. But the Heb-Sed wasn't just a celebration of power, it was a survival strategy. In a world where the pharaoh was seen as the living embodiment of the gods, any perceived weakness could lead to chaos. The festival's rituals were a way to prevent that. They reinforced the idea that the pharaoh was eternal, unchanging, and divinely ordained. As the people watched their ruler perform these sacred acts, they were reassured that the gods still favored Egypt. This ancient tradition of endurance and renewal wasn't unique to Egypt. Across cultures, rituals involving extreme acts of devotion have been used to prove one's worthiness, whether to gods, rulers, or communities. From the Heb-Sed ceremonial runs to the self-inflicted trials of other civilizations, these practices reveal a universal truth: the lengths humans will go to prove their strength, their faith, and their commitment to something greater than themselves. The Inca Empire, one of the most sophisticated civilizations in the Americas, held a deeply spiritual connection to the natural world, and their rituals often reflected this bond. Among the most striking and, to modern eyes, unsettling was the Capacocha ceremony, a practice that involved the sacrifice of children during times of crisis. Droughts, famine, volcanic eruptions, or the death of an emperor could trigger this ritual, as the Inca believed such events signaled the displeasure of their gods. To restore balance, they offered what they considered their most precious resource: the lives of innocent children. These young individuals, often selected from noble families, were seen as pure and untainted, making them ideal intermediaries between the human and divine realms. The selection process was meticulous and steeped in ritual. Children, typically between the ages of 6 and 15, were chosen for their physical perfection and lineage. They were considered chosen ones, living symbols of the empire's prosperity and divine favor. Once selected, these children were transported to sacred sites, often high in the Andes Mountains, where the air was thin and the connection to the heavens felt closest. Spanish chroniclers such as Pedro Cieza de Leon described these journeys as solemn processions, accompanied by priests and laden with offerings of gold, silver, and textiles. The children, dressed in fine garments and adorned with jewelry, were treated with reverence as their sacrifice was believed to ensure the gods' blessings and the empire's survival. Modern archaeologists have uncovered the remains of these sacrifices in frozen mountaintop tombs, preserved by the cold, dry air. These discoveries have provided chilling yet invaluable insights into the ritual. One such find, the mummified remains of a young girl known as the Luleloko Maiden, revealed that she had been given chicha, a fermented corn drink, and coca leaves before her death, likely to ease her transition into the afterlife. These findings underscore the spiritual gravity of the ceremony, as the Inca viewed death not as an end but as a transformative passage into a divine existence. The Capacocha ritual was deeply embedded in Inca cosmology, reflecting their belief in reciprocity between humans and the gods. Sacrifices were not acts of cruelty but acts of profound devotion, meant to maintain the cosmic order. The children were seen as messengers bridging the earthly and celestial realms. In their deaths, they became sacred beings, forever revered as protectors of the empire. This practice, while shocking to contemporary sensibilities, reveals a world view where life and death were intertwined in a continuous cycle of renewal. As we move from rituals of sacrifice to those involving symbolic acts of transformation, we see how cultures across history have sought to navigate the mysteries of existence through acts of profound spiritual significance. Moving from the mysterious and often chilling rituals of the ancient world, we now uncover a celebration that was not just a religious event but a profound social statement, the Thesmophoria Festival of ancient Greece. This unique festival, dedicated to Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, and her daughter Persephone, was an exclusive affair attended only by women. For 3 days, women from all walks of life came together, leaving behind their usual domestic roles to participate in rituals that honored the cycles of nature, fertility, and agriculture. The heart of the Thesmophoria lay in its symbolic connection to the earth and its bounty. Women would descend into underground chambers to retrieve decaying offerings, often remnants of piglets that had been placed there months earlier. These remains were then mixed with seeds before being scattered across the fields, a ritual believed to ensure a fruitful harvest. The playwright Aristophanes, in his comedy, Thesmophoria Zeusi, gives us a glimpse into the festival's atmosphere, describing it as a time of both solemnity and revelry, where women could openly express their devotion and their desires. But the Thesmophoria was more than just a fertility rite. In a society where women's voices were often silenced, this festival provided a rare space for empowerment. Historian Sarah Pomeroy notes that the Thesmophoria allowed women to assert their importance in a male-dominated world, highlighting their indispensable role in both the household and the broader community. By controlling the rituals tied to agriculture, the very foundation of Greek society, these women wielded a quiet but significant form of influence. As we reflect on the Thesmophoria, it's striking to see how rituals could serve dual purposes, honoring the divine while also challenging societal norms. This blend of reverence and rebellion sets the stage for our next exploration: rituals that took devotion to the extreme. Across cultures and centuries, fasting has been a common thread, a way to purify the body and soul. From the thesmophorious celebration of life to the self-denial of fasting, the human connection to the divine has taken many forms, each with its own profound significance. As the winds of change swept across the American West in the late 19th century, a powerful spiritual movement emerged among Native American tribes. Known as the ghost dance, this ritual was more than just a ceremony. It was a profound expression of hope, resistance, and connection to the divine. Born out of the visions of a Paiute prophet named Wovoka, the ghost dance promised the restoration of ancestral lands, the return of the buffalo, and the reunion of the living with their ancestors. Participants believed that through rhythmic dancing, singing, and prayer, they could bring about a new era of peace and renewal, free from the suffering inflicted by colonization. The dances themselves were mesmerizing, often lasting for hours or even days. Dancers moved in large circles, their bodies swaying to the beat of drums and chants, their eyes fixed on the heavens. Many reported entering trance-like states where they experienced vivid visions of a world reborn, free from the hardships they endured. One Lakota leader, Kicking Bear, described these visions as a glimpse into a future where the earth would be covered with sweet grass and the rivers would run clear once more. These spiritual experiences were deeply personal yet united communities in a shared belief in the possibility of renewal. However, the U.S. government viewed the ghost dance not as a spiritual practice but as a threat. Fearing that the movement would incite rebellion, officials banned the ritual and sought to suppress it by any means necessary. The tragic massacre at Wounded Knee in 1890 stands as a stark reminder of this suppression. Hundreds of Lakota men, women, and children were killed by U.S. soldiers during a ghost dance gathering, marking one of the darkest chapters in American history. Despite this violence, the ghost dance endures as a symbol of resilience and spiritual defiance. This connection to the divine through movement and vision is not unique. Across cultures, rituals involving dreams and altered states of consciousness have long been a bridge between the earthly and the spiritual. From the dreamwalkers of ancient civilizations to the mystics who sought divine messages in their sleep, humanity has always turned to the intangible to find meaning and guidance. These practices remind us that the boundaries between the seen and the unseen are often far more fluid than we might imagine. Imagine dedicating your entire life to a single flame, a flame believed to be the very heartbeat of an empire. This was the reality for the Vestal Virgins of ancient Rome, priestesses who were tasked with maintaining the sacred fire of Vesta, the goddess of hearth and home. This eternal flame wasn't just a symbol, it was thought to be the source of Rome's power and stability. If it ever went out, Romans believed disaster would follow. The Vestals, chosen as young girls from noble families, were not just religious figures, they were the spiritual guardians of Rome itself. The Vestals took vows of chastity, a commitment that lasted for 30 years. During this time, they lived in strict seclusion, dedicating themselves entirely to their duties. But these vows were more than just a personal sacrifice, they were a matter of life and death. Breaking this oath of chastity was considered a betrayal of the gods and the state, punishable by a horrifying fate, being buried alive. Roman historian Plutarch described this punishment as a way to avoid spilling the blood of a sacred figure, as their lives were seen as too holy for a common execution. It was a chilling reminder of the weight their role carried. Yet, despite the risks, the Vestals held a unique position in Roman society. They were among the few women who could own property, make wills, and even vote, rights unheard of for most women at the time. Their influence extended beyond the temple, as they were often called upon to mediate disputes or safeguard important documents. The Roman statesman Cicero once remarked that the safety of Rome depended on the Vestals' unwavering devotion. Their purity and dedication were seen as a reflection of Rome's moral and spiritual strength. But what made the Vestals truly extraordinary was their dual role as both sacred and political figures. They weren't just tending a fire, they were embodying the continuity and stability of an empire. The sacred flame was a metaphor for Rome itself. As long as it burned, the city would endure. Modern scholars like Mary Beard have pointed out that the Vestals' rituals were less about personal faith and more about maintaining the collective identity of Rome. Their lives were a testament to the idea that service to the gods was inseparable from service to the state. As we reflect on the Vestals' extraordinary devotion, it's impossible not to wonder about the lengths people will go to in the name of faith and duty. Their story sets the stage for an even more dramatic exploration of rituals that demanded extreme acts of service, rituals that pushed the boundaries of human endurance and belief. Moving from the realm of blood and fire, we now step into a world of profound symbolism and moral reckoning, the ancient Egyptian weighing of the heart ceremony. Picture this: a soul stands before the gods in the Hall of Two Truths, their heart the seat of emotion, morality, and identity placed on a golden scale. On the other side of the balance rests a single feather, the symbol of Maat, the cosmic order and divine truth that govern the universe. This was no ordinary trial. It was a moment of ultimate judgment where the fate of the deceased hung in the balance, literally. At the heart of this ritual was the belief that one's life would be measured against the principles of Maat, truth, justice, and harmony. The Book of the Dead, a collection of spells and prayers meant to guide the deceased through the afterlife, describes this moment vividly. One spell implores the heart not to bear false witness, saying, "Do not stand up against me in the tribunal, do not be my enemy in the presence of the keeper of the balance." If the heart proved lighter than the feather, the soul was deemed pure and granted eternal life in the field of reeds. But if the heart was heavy with sin, it would be devoured by Ammit, a fearsome creature part lion, hippopotamus, and crocodile, condemning the soul to oblivion. Modern Egyptologists see this ritual as a reflection of the Egyptians' deeply moral worldview. Dr. Janus Mann, a renowned scholar of ancient Egypt, notes that the weighing of the heart wasn't just about personal judgment, it was a reaffirmation of societal values. The Egyptians believed that living in accordance with Maat wasn't just a personal duty but a cosmic necessity. By upholding truth and justice, individuals contributed to the stability of the universe itself. This ceremony also highlights the Egyptians' emphasis on accountability. Unlike some cultures that relied on divine mercy or sacrifice to secure a place in the afterlife, the Egyptians believed in a system where actions spoke louder than offerings. This ritual wasn't just about fear of punishment, it was a celebration of integrity, a reminder that a life well lived was its own reward. As we leave the Hall of Two Truths, we're reminded that the concept of judgment through symbolic acts is a thread woven through many cultures. Whether it's the scales of justice, the feather of truth, or the weight of a moral life, these rituals reveal humanity's enduring quest to balance the scales of right and wrong. And with that, we turn to another fascinating ritual where symbolism and judgment take center stage. Moving into the heart of ancient Greece, we find the Anthesteria, a festival that masterfully blended joy and reverence, celebration and solemnity. Held in late winter, this three-day event marked the opening of new wine jars, a moment of both agricultural and spiritual significance. But the Anthesteria wasn't just a toast to Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy. It was also a time to honor the spirits of the dead, creating a fascinating duality at its core. On the first day, known as Pythia, the wine jars were ceremonially uncorked and the first sips were offered to Dionysus. The air buzzed with excitement as communities gathered to celebrate the fruits of their labor. Yet, even amidst the revelry, there was a somber undertone. The Greeks believed that the spirits of the deceased roamed freely during this time, and the festival served as a bridge between the living and the dead. The second day, Chose, was marked by a peculiar ritual. Participants would drink wine in silence from small pitchers, a stark contrast to the usual boisterousness of Greek festivities. This silence was a gesture of respect for the dead, a reminder that even in celebration, the boundary between life and death was thin. Ancient poets like Aristophanes captured this tension, describing the festival as a time when laughter mingled with tears and wine flowed like the Styx. Finally, the third day, Chaitroi, was dedicated to appeasing the restless spirits. Families would prepare pots of cooked grains and offer them to the dead, a symbolic act of nourishment and closure. Modern historians note how this ritual reflected the Greeks' deep respect for the afterlife, a belief that even in their most joyous moments, they remained tethered to the unseen world. What makes the Anthesteria so compelling is its ability to balance celebration with solemnity. It wasn't just about drinking wine or communing with the dead. It was about acknowledging the cyclical nature of life itself. The festival reminds us that ancient rituals often served as mirrors, reflecting the complexities of human existence. This interplay between life and death, joy and reverence, sets the stage for our next exploration. Rituals that go beyond symbolic gestures, diving into extreme acts of devotion through offerings. These practices reveal how far humanity has gone to express faith, from the sacred to the shocking. The Aztec New Fire ceremony, known as the Binding of the Years, was one of the most dramatic and symbolic rituals in Mesoamerican history. Held once every 52 years, this event marked the end of a full cycle in the Aztec calendar, a moment when the world teetered on the brink of destruction. According to Aztec belief, if the sacred fire failed to be reignited, the sun would vanish, plunging the world into eternal darkness, and malevolent creatures known as Tzitzimime would descend to devour humanity. The stakes couldn't have been higher. To prepare for this pivotal moment, the Aztecs would extinguish all fires across their empire, smash household idols, and cleanse their homes. The entire population would gather in expectation, watching as priests climbed to the summit of the Hill of the Star, a sacred site near Tenochtitlan. There, under the night sky, the high priest would perform a ritual sacrifice, offering a captive's heart to the gods. As the Spanish chronicler Bernardino de Sahagun later described, the priest would then use a wooden drill to ignite a new flame in the victim's chest cavity, a fire that symbolized the rebirth of the sun and the continuation of life itself. Once the flames were lit, runners would carry the sacred fire to temples and homes across the empire, reigniting hearths and hearts alike. Modern archaeologists have uncovered evidence that underscores the ceremony's profound importance. Excavations near the Hill of the Star have revealed ceremonial objects and offerings, suggesting the Aztecs spared no expense in ensuring the ritual's success. The New Fire ceremony wasn't just a religious act, it was a reaffirmation of the Aztec worldview, a belief in the cyclical nature of time, the fragility of existence, and humanity's dependence on divine favor. It bound the community together, reminding them of their shared responsibilities and their place in the cosmos. Fire, as a symbol of life and renewal, played a central role in countless ancient rituals. From the Aztecs to the Zoroastrians, civilizations have long seen flames as a bridge between the human and the divine. This connection between fire and spirituality continues to fascinate us, offering a glimpse into how our ancestors sought to commune with forces greater than themselves. And as we move forward, we'll explore even more rituals where fire served as both a destroyer and a creator, illuminating the mysteries of the past. The Saturnalia Festival, celebrated in ancient Rome, was a time of chaos, joy, and a complete upheaval of societal norms. Dedicated to Saturn, the god of agriculture and time, this festival turned the rigid structure of Roman life upside down. For 7 days, starting around December 17th, slaves became masters, masters served their slaves, and the usual rules of decorum were tossed aside. Imagine the streets of Rome filled with laughter, feasting, and the sounds of dice rolling. Gambling was not only allowed but encouraged during this time. Roman poets like Martial and Catullus captured the spirit of Saturnalia in their writings. Martial described it as the best of days, a time when no one is afraid of their master's frown. Modern historians note that this festival wasn't just about indulgence. It was a symbolic reset, a way to honor Saturn's golden age, a time when all people were said to live in harmony and abundance. The role reversal rituals served as a reminder that, at least temporarily, everyone was equal under Saturn's watch. But Saturnalia's influence didn't end with the fall of Rome. Many of its traditions, gift-giving, feasting, and the lighting of candles, found their way into modern Christmas celebrations. Even the timing aligns, as Saturnalia occurred in late December, overlapping with the winter solstice. This blending of pagan and Christian traditions shows how ancient rituals can evolve and endure, shaping cultures centuries later. As we reflect on the exuberance of Saturnalia, it's fascinating to consider how food and feasting played a central role, not just in this festival but in many religious rituals. From lavish banquets to acts of devotion through culinary excess, the connection between food and spirituality has long been a powerful one. This brings us to another striking aspect of religious rituals: extreme acts of devotion expressed through feasting, where food becomes more than sustenance, it becomes a sacred offering. The Apat festival was one of ancient Egypt's most grandiose celebrations, a dazzling spectacle that brought together gods, kings, and commoners in a sacred unity. At its heart, this festival honored the divine triad of Amun, Mut, and Khonsu deities who symbolized creation, motherhood, and the moon. But it wasn't just a religious event, it was a powerful statement of the pharaoh's divine authority and the kingdom's cohesion. Each year, the pharaoh would lead a grand procession from the Karnak temple to the Luxor temple, carrying the sacred statues of Amun, Mut, and Khonsu on elaborately decorated barges along the Nile. This journey wasn't just a parade, it was a ritual of renewal. As the gods traveled, they were believed to rejuvenate their divine essence and, by extension, the pharaoh's power to rule. One Egyptian text describes the scene: "The gods rejoice, the land flourishes, and the hearts of the people are filled with joy." Modern Egyptologists like Dr. Betsy Bryan have noted that this festival was a dramatic reaffirmation of the pharaoh's role as the mediator between the gods and the people. The rituals during the Apat festival were deeply symbolic. The pharaoh would enter the inner sanctum of the Luxor temple, a space so sacred that only the highest priests could accompany him. There, he would perform ceremonies intended to merge his earthly authority with the divine power of Amun. This act wasn't just about religion, it was politics. By reinforcing his divine connection, the pharaoh solidified his legitimacy and the loyalty of his subjects. The festival also served as a unifying force for the kingdom. People from all corners of Egypt would gather to witness the spectacle, celebrating not just the gods but the shared identity of their nation. The Apat festival was a reminder that the pharaoh's rule was intertwined with the gods' will, and that Egypt itself was a sacred, indivisible entity. This focus on renewal and unity leads us to another fascinating aspect of ancient rituals, those that involved symbolic acts of rebirth and regeneration. From the cyclical flooding of the Nile to the rituals that marked the changing of seasons, ancient cultures often turned to symbolic acts to reaffirm life and continuity. These practices reveal a universal human desire to connect with forces greater than ourselves, bridging the gap between the earthly and the divine. The Panathenaic Festival, one of ancient Greece's most spectacular celebrations, was far more than just a religious event. It was a vibrant declaration of Athenian identity and pride. Held every year with a grander version every 4 years, this festival honored Athena, the city's patron goddess, on her birthday. Picture this: the streets of Athens filled with processions, music, and the scent of offerings as citizens gathered to celebrate their divine protector. But this wasn't just a birthday party for Athena. It was a carefully orchestrated display of Athenian power, culture, and unity. At the heart of the festival was the Panathenaic procession, a dazzling parade that wound its way through the city to the Acropolis. Thousands of participants carried sacred objects, including a beautifully woven peplos or robe offered to Athena's statue. This robe, adorned with intricate designs, symbolized the city's devotion and craftsmanship. Ancient playwrights like Euripides and Aristophanes often referenced the festival in their works, capturing its grandeur and the deep connection Athenians felt to their goddess. One historian notes, the Panathenaic Festival wasn't just a ritual, it was Athens itself on display, a living testament to its greatness. The festival also included athletic and artistic competitions, where citizens and even foreigners competed for glory. These games weren't just about physical prowess, they were acts of devotion, showing that excellence in body and mind was a way to honor Athena. Winners received amphorae filled with olive oil, a nod to Athena's sacred olive tree, which was said to have sprung up on the Acropolis as a gift to the city. These competitions weren't just entertainment, they were a way for Athens to assert its cultural dominance, drawing participants and spectators from across the Greek world. But the Panathenaic Festival wasn't just about celebration, it was about identity. It reinforced what it meant to be Athenian, blending religious devotion with civic pride. The rituals, the games, the offerings, all of it was designed to remind Athenians of their shared heritage and their role as the cultural leaders of Greece. Modern historians often point to the festival as a prime example of how religion and politics intertwined in the ancient world, shaping societies in ways that still resonate today. As we leave the grandeur of the Panathenaic Festival behind, we turn to rituals that took devotion to even more extreme levels, rituals where competition wasn't just about glory, but about survival itself. These were acts of faith that pushed the boundaries of human endurance, where the stakes were as high as life and death. The Lemuria Festival, one of ancient Rome's most haunting traditions, offers a chilling glimpse into how the Romans grappled with the unseen world. This eerie event, held each May, was designed to appease the lemures, restless spirits of the dead who are believed to wander the earth, bringing misfortune to the living. The poet Ovid vividly describes the rituals in his work Fasti, painting a picture of a society deeply fearful of the supernatural. At midnight, the head of the household would walk barefoot through the home, throwing black beans over his shoulder while chanting, "With these beans I redeem me and mine." It was believed the spirits would follow the beans, leaving the family in peace. This act wasn't just about warding off ghosts, it was a profound expression of Roman beliefs about the afterlife, where the dead could linger among the living if not properly honored. Modern scholars like Mary Beard have noted how the Lemuria Festival reveals the dual nature of Roman spirituality, a mix of fear and reverence. The rituals weren't merely superstitions, they were deeply tied to the Roman concept of pietas or duty, which extended beyond the living to include the dead. Families had a sacred obligation to ensure their ancestors rested peacefully, or else risk their wrath. This fear of restless spirits wasn't unique to Rome, but the way it was formalized into a public ritual speaks volumes about the culture's priorities. The Lemuria wasn't just about avoiding bad luck. It was a reminder of the fragile balance between the living and the dead, a theme that resonated throughout Roman life. As we move from rituals aimed at appeasing spirits to those seeking communion with the divine, it's fascinating to see how offerings played a central role in bridging these worlds. Whether it was beans scattered for restless ghosts or gifts presented to the gods, the act of giving was a universal thread in Roman religious practice. These rituals weren't just about fear, they were about connection, a way to navigate the mysteries of existence with both caution and hope. The Sed festival, known as the Heb Sed, was one of ancient Egypt's most significant and elaborate celebrations, a grand jubilee designed to rejuvenate the pharaoh's divine power and reaffirm his right to rule. Held typically after 30 years of a pharaoh's reign, though sometimes sooner, this festival was not just a royal birthday party, it was a cosmic reset, a ritual renewal of the king's connection to the gods and his people. The Sed festival was steeped in symbolism, with ceremonies that mirrored the pharaoh's mythical role as both a god and a unifier of the two lands of Egypt. At the heart of the Sed festival were rituals that showcased the pharaoh's physical and spiritual vitality. One of the most striking moments was the running of the appease bull, where the pharaoh would run alongside the sacred bull, symbolizing his strength and endurance. This act was more than a display of vigor. It was a public affirmation of the king's divine mandate to lead. Ancient texts describe the pharaoh taking part in symbolic reenactments of his coronation, donning the regalia of Upper and Lower Egypt and performing sacred dances to honor the gods. These rituals were meticulously choreographed, each movement carrying deep religious significance. Egyptologists often point to the Sed festival as a masterclass in political and spiritual theater. As one modern scholar put it, the Sed festival wasn't just about the pharaoh, it was about the entire kingdom. It was a carefully orchestrated performance that reminded everyone from the nobility to the common farmer that the pharaoh was the living embodiment of Mat, the cosmic order that kept chaos at bay. By renewing the pharaoh's divine authority, the festival reinforced the stability of the kingdom, ensuring that the people believed in the continuity of their leader's rule and, by extension, the prosperity of Egypt itself. Transitioning from the grandeur of the Sed festival, we moved to a different kind of ritual, one that demanded not just ceremonial elegance but extreme acts of devotion through endurance. These were practices where individuals pushed their bodies and spirits to the limit, all in service of their faith. Such rituals, often seen as tests of dedication, remind us that devotion can take many forms, from the regal splendor of a pharaoh's jubilee to the austere trials of the faithful. The Dionysia festival in ancient Greece was more than just a celebration of wine and theater. It was a vibrant, transformative event that shaped the cultural and political fabric of Athenian society. Dedicated to Dionysus, the god of wine, fertility, and ecstasy, this festival was a dazzling mix of art, religion, and civic pride. Imagine the streets of Athens filled with processions, the air thick with the scent of wine and incense, as citizens gathered to honor their patron deity through performances that would leave a lasting mark on Western civilization. At the heart of the Dionysia were dramatic competitions, where playwrights like Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes presented their tragedies and comedies to thousands of spectators. These plays weren't just entertainment, they were profound reflections on human nature, morality, and the complexities of Athenian democracy. As the ancient playwright Aeschylus once wrote, "From a small seed a mighty trunk may grow." And indeed, the Dionysia planted seeds that would grow into the theatrical traditions we know today. Modern historians often point to this festival as a cornerstone of Western theater, highlighting its role in shaping narrative structure, character development, and even the concept of the chorus. But the Dionysia wasn't just about performance, it was deeply intertwined with Athenian identity. The festival was a space where citizens, regardless of social status, could come together to celebrate their shared culture. It was a ritual of unity where the boundaries between the sacred and the secular blurred. The playwrights themselves were seen as spiritual guides, using their stories to explore the divine and the human experience. As one modern historian put it, the Dionysia was a mirror held up to Athenian society, reflecting its triumphs, its fears, and its aspirations. This connection to democracy was no accident. The festival's organization was a communal effort funded by wealthy citizens as a form of public service. The plays often tackled themes of justice, power, and the responsibilities of citizenship, encouraging audiences to think critically about their roles in society. It was a ritual that transformed not just the individual but the entire community, fostering a sense of collective identity and purpose. As we move from the Dionysia to other rituals of transformation, it's striking how many ancient practices sought to change the individual or society through symbolic acts. Whether through theater, wine, or sacred ceremonies, these rituals remind us of humanity's enduring desire to connect with something greater and to emerge changed by the experience. The Saturnalia Festival, celebrated in ancient Rome, offers a fascinating glimpse into how the Romans honored their ancestors and kept family ties alive across generations. Held each year from February 13th to the 21st, this 9-day event was deeply rooted in Roman culture, emphasizing respect for the dead and the enduring connection between the living and those who came before them. Families would visit the tombs of their ancestors, bringing offerings of flowers, wine, and food, simple yet meaningful gestures that symbolized remembrance and gratitude. The poet Ovid captured this sentiment perfectly when he wrote, "The graves of the dead are appeased with small tributes," reminding us that even the smallest acts of reverence carried immense significance. But the Saturnalia wasn't just about individual families paying their respects. It was a communal event that reinforced the very fabric of Roman society. Public sacrifices were offered to the manes, the spirits of the deceased, while families gathered privately to share stories and memories of their loved ones. This blend of public and private rituals created a shared sense of identity, reminding Romans that their ancestors were not just personal figures but integral parts of a larger collective history. Modern scholars often highlight how these practices helped stabilize Roman society as they fostered loyalty, continuity, and a deep respect for tradition. What's striking about the Saturnalia is how it balanced solemnity with celebration. While the festival had its somber moments, it also included feasts and gatherings that brought families closer together. This duality reflects the Roman belief that honoring the dead wasn't just an act of mourning but a way to affirm life and strengthen bonds among the living. It's a reminder that rituals, no matter how ancient, often serve dual purposes, connecting us to the past while shaping our present. As we reflect on the Saturnalia, it's impossible not to notice how its themes of remembrance and devotion echo in other rituals from history. Some cultures took these acts of reverence to even greater extremes, believing that only through extraordinary acts could they truly honor their ancestors or deities. These practices, often marked by intense physical or emotional displays, reveal just how far humanity has gone to express its deepest commitments. The ancient Egyptian Beautiful Feast of the Valley was more than just a festival. It was a profound celebration of life, death, and the eternal journey of the soul. Held annually during the New Kingdom period, this event brought the living and the dead together in a vibrant display of devotion and remembrance. Families would cross the Nile to visit the tombs of their ancestors in the Theban necropolis, carrying offerings of food, flowers, and incense. But this wasn't just about honoring the deceased. It was a time to reaffirm the bond between the living and the divine. One of the most striking aspects of the festival was its emphasis on joy rather than mourning. The Egyptians believed that death was a transition, not an end, and the beautiful feast of the valley reflected this optimism. As one ancient inscription puts it, the dead are not gone, they live in the hearts of those who remember them. This sentiment was echoed in the rituals where music, dancing, and feasting played central roles. The festival was a reminder that the dead were still part of the community, and their presence could be felt through the rituals performed in their honor. Modern Egyptologists have noted how the beautiful Feast of the Valley reveals the intricate layers of Egyptian spirituality. Dr. Salima Ikram, a renowned Egyptologist, explains, this festival wasn't just about death, it was about continuity. The Egyptians saw life and death as interconnected cycles, and the festival was a way to celebrate that eternal flow. The offerings left at the tombs were believed to nourish the ka, or life force, of the deceased, ensuring their well-being in the afterlife. At the same time, the living participated in communal feasts, symbolizing the shared bond between generations. Music was a key element of the festival, serving as a bridge between the earthly and the divine. Drums, flutes, and harps filled the air, creating an atmosphere of celebration and reverence. The Egyptians believed that music had the power to connect humans with the gods, and during the beautiful Feast of the Valley, it was thought to help guide the souls of the dead to their eternal resting place. This blending of joy and spirituality made the festival a unique expression of Egyptian culture, one that celebrated life even in the face of death. As we explore these ancient rituals, it's impossible not to notice how deeply music was woven into the fabric of Egyptian spirituality. From the rhythmic beats of drums to the haunting melodies of harps, sound played a vital role in connecting the living with the divine. And this connection wasn't unique to Egypt. Across cultures and centuries, music has been a universal language of communion with the sacred. The ancient Greek Pythia festival was more than just a celebration of the harvest. It was a profound ritual that wove together agriculture, spirituality, and the rhythms of life itself. Dedicated to Apollo, the god of light, healing, and prophecy, this festival marked the end of the harvest season and the beginning of a new cycle. At its heart was the Eleusinian, a sacred olive branch wrapped in wool and adorned with fruits, bread, and honey jars. Families would carry this symbol of abundance through the streets, singing hymns and offering prayers for prosperity. As the poet Callimachus once wrote, the Eleusinian brings figs and fat loaves and honey in a jar and olive oil to anoint the skin. This wasn't just a gesture of gratitude, it was a reminder of humanity's deep connection to the earth and its cycles. The Pythia also featured a unique dish called Pyanopsia, a stew made from boiled beans and grain. This humble meal symbolized the fruits of the harvest and the sustenance provided by the land. According to modern historians, the ritual of sharing this dish reinforced communal bonds, uniting people in a shared experience of gratitude and renewal. The festival wasn't just about Apollo, it was a celebration of life itself, acknowledging the delicate balance between human effort and nature's generosity. But the Pythia wasn't just about food and offerings. It was a moment of reflection on the fragility of existence and the hope for renewal. The rituals carried out during this festival were deeply symbolic, from the Eleusinian representing the promise of future harvests to the communal feasts that honored the gods and the land. As the ancient Greeks understood, these acts of devotion weren't just for the divine, they were a way to honor the very essence of life. This brings us to another fascinating aspect of ancient rituals, the extreme acts of devotion that went beyond simple offerings. From self-sacrifice to elaborate ceremonies, these practices reveal the lengths to which people would go to express their faith and gratitude. The Pythia, with its blend of simplicity and symbolism, reminds us of the universal human desire to connect with something greater, a theme that echoes across cultures and centuries. The ancient Romans held a deep reverence for the land, and few festivals highlight this connection more vividly than the Robigalia. Celebrated each year on April 25th, this ritual was dedicated to Robigus, the god of crop blight. Farmers and citizens alike gathered to offer sacrifices, hoping to protect their wheat and grain from the devastating effects of disease. The heart of the festival involved a procession to a sacred grove outside Rome, where priests would sacrifice a red dog and a sheep, symbolizing the blood of the earth and the life it sustained. Roman poets like Ovid documented the festival, describing it as a plea to avert the rust from the crops so that the fields may prosper. These words capture the desperation and hope of a society that relied entirely on agriculture for survival. Modern scholars point out how the Robigalia wasn't just about divine intervention. It was a reflection of the Roman understanding of nature's fragility. The rituals underscored their belief that harmony with the gods was essential for a bountiful harvest, a concept that shaped their daily lives and governance. The festival also reveals the practical side of Roman spirituality. The timing of the Robigalia coincided with the critical growth phase of wheat, showing how their religious practices were deeply intertwined with agricultural cycles. This wasn't just a spiritual act, it was a survival strategy. The Romans knew that a single blight could devastate entire communities, and their rituals were as much about maintaining social order as they were about appeasing the gods. What's fascinating about the Robigalia is how it reflects the broader Roman world, a society built on the belief that human effort alone wasn't enough. They saw the divine as an active participant in their success or failure, and their festivals were a way to negotiate that relationship. As we explore these ancient practices, it's impossible not to see parallels in how modern societies still grapple with the forces of nature, even if our rituals and beliefs have evolved. This blend of practicality and spirituality in the Robigalia offers a window into the Roman soul, a people who revered the land not just as a resource but as a sacred partner in their survival. As we move toward the final reflections on these rituals, we'll see how their legacy continues to shape our understanding of humanity's enduring relationship with the natural world. As we reach the end of our journey through the 40 most shocking religious rituals of the past, it's impossible not to marvel at the sheer diversity and depth of human expression when it comes to spirituality. From the blood-soaked sacrifices of the Aztecs to the ecstatic dances of Sufi mystics, these rituals span continents, cultures, and millennia. Yet, despite their differences, they all share a common thread, a profound yearning for connection, meaning, and something greater than ourselves. These practices, though often extreme or even unsettling by modern standards, were never arbitrary. They were deeply rooted in the beliefs, values, and worldviews of the people who performed them. Whether it was the Viking funeral ships set ablaze to honor fallen warriors or the self-mummification rituals of Buddhist monks in Japan, each act carried immense cultural and spiritual weight. They were expressions of devotion, attempts to commune with the divine, and ways to navigate the mysteries of life and death. But what can we, as modern observers, take away from these ancient traditions? While we may not share the same methods or beliefs, the underlying desires that drove these rituals still resonate today. The search for purpose, the need for connection, and the longing for transcendence are universal. These rituals remind us that, across time and space, humans have always sought to bridge the gap between the earthly and the eternal. So, as we reflect on these 40 extraordinary practices, we invite you to consider this. Which ritual stood out to you the most? Was it the haunting beauty of the Maya cenote sacrifices, or the intense discipline of the Kumbh Mela pilgrimage? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're fascinated by the mysteries of history, don't forget to explore more stories like these on our channel. Together, let's keep uncovering the incredible ways humanity has sought to understand the divine.